Moby.
We have an exciting MobyPod episode that we're doing right now.
That's what I heard.
So let me set the stage. Well, we're sitting here. That's the obvious literal stage. Mm-hmm. But we're going to talk about rave culture because something happened a few weeks ago. I don't even remember the context necessarily, but it was revealed to me that you've never been to a rave.
Well, not really. I wound up at Ministry of Sound in London one night.
Okay.
But I don't know that I would really consider that a true rave experience.
We'll call it rave adjacent.
Yeah. So the answer is no.
Okay. So once I found out that you'd never actually been to a rave, I was like, well, we need to talk about rave culture.
Yeah.
And I need to do important things like teach you how to dance like a raver.
Yeah, duh.
And so we're gonna do a lot. We're gonna talk about the history of rave culture, what raves were like. One qualifying aspect of that is I am sober and old now. Mm-hmm. So anyone who's expecting a description of what rave culture is like in 2024 or 2025, I'm not the expert there.
This is a historical journey through raves past.
Yes, a little more. And also, the majority of people listening to this are listening and not watching. The people watching might have noticed that you and I are sort of dressed up like ravers.
Well, look, I did my best. As an interloper, an outsider, I'm on the outside, I'm looking in. This was the best I could come up with based on a very quick Pinterest experience.
You did great. And the fact that you have an LED glowing luminescent hat doesn't in any way look ridiculous.
It feels so right.
Yeah. And I'm assuming the fact that I'm wearing a green bucket hat that has a frog's face on it also doesn't look in any way ridiculous.
No, it doesn't look ridiculous at all.
You can take me very seriously. Like everything I say with my bucket hat with the frog face on it just has gravitas.
I think so. There's a depth to it just naturally. But you also have an interesting, a sort of bright red zip-up hoodie with some flames on it. It's giving anime.
So here's the thing. Earlier today, when I knew we were going to be recording this rave episode, I realized I don't really have much in the way of rave clothes. Mm-hmm. So I ran around my house and I realized I don't have any big, gigantic trousers because rave culture for the longest time involved big, gigantic trousers.
I got the biggest trousers I could dang find
and they're
for under $12 on the internet.
Well, at some point we should talk about rave clothing in general.
Can I add something to your look?
Almost, yes. But
I'm going to add something to my look.
But there's one other thing that we're going to do today that hopefully will be fun. We're going to teach you how to rave dance circa 1991.
Okay.
We are going to discuss the history of rave music and culture and fashion. But also, I've done a new remix of the song Feeling So Real.
Ultimate rave song.
Quite an ultimate rave song. And I'm going to open it up and we can go through the multi-track and I can show you how the song came together.
Oh, yeah. I want to feel realer than I ever felt.
Okay. And just in case anyone's concerned, I'm still sober. Like, if we were really looking for verisimilitude and accuracy, we both would have taken a lot of drugs to be here. But it's the middle of the day. I'm old and sober. You're not old, but you're primarily sober. So we are...
I feel like I should take this opportunity to tell you that I've macrodosed on psilocybin here today. I'm just kidding. I haven't actually. But that's not really a rave drug.
It's, we can also talk about rave drugs.
Yeah.
So let's get to that. But you were going to mention that you had something you wanted to give me to augment my costume.
I have two things to give you to augment.
I'm afraid of what one of them is because I don't think I want to put it in my mouth.
Hey, did you look in my secret area?
I saw there was a box.
No, Moby.
And there were some...
Okay, well, let's not. Okay.
There was some Maggie Simpson style dump pacifiers in there. What?
You're ruining the surprise.
You had lost your glasses, and I was like, "Where are the glasses?" Oh, then we've got a candy necklace.
Yeah, I'm gonna put my candy necklace on.
Okay.
I apologize for the plastic sounds, audio folks.
Yeah, sorry, and also just for plastic in general.
And also for plastic.
Bagel, you might think you want to eat this, but you don't. I'm sorry. Bagel thinks she wants to eat the candy necklace. Bagel, no one wants to eat this candy necklace.
I do. They're Smarties.
It's for decoration only. I'm sorry, Bagel. She's so sad because there's food.
Sorry, Bagel. It's not for dogs.
Okay, I'm going to put on my candy Now I am officially a candy raver.
Ooh, look at you. That actually looks nice on you, Moby. You should wear accessories more often.
I should wear candy necklaces more often.
Yeah, or like some sort of choker. Okay, but here's the other gift.
The other gift is a Maggie Simpson style.
Okay, so I got one for myself, and I got one specially for you.
Okay.
It's a bedazzled pacifier that says space on it.
Okay. My only concern is...
I don't think you should put it in your mouth.
Well,
look, I got a purple bedazzled pacifier that says angel, and it has a...
It tastes like the dentist's office.
Did you put it in your mouth?
Yeah.
Should we put them in our mouths?
I mean, maybe later when we do our rave dancing, maybe we can.
But here's my question, and this.
Hi, Bakes.
This is probably something that would have. Oh, Bagel's gonna love that. This is probably something that would have gotten answered later. But when I was doing my Pinterest exploration of rave fashions, which by the way, I'm wearing a long sleeve mesh shirt.
Over a crop top?
Over a sort of crop top. Well, mostly because I didn't want to be naked at work.
Bagel's tail is hitting the microphone.
Oh, Bagel. So I didn't want to be nude.
Yeah.
But then also my big pants. But I wonder, I don't understand why people wore pacifiers at raves.
That's a very good question, and it shall be answered when we get to that part of today's rave podcast.
Isn't this a beautiful pacifier?
It is beautiful, and thank you for mine. I thought it was just going to be a regular old, toxic...
No, but it has a little tiny cupcake charm on it, and it says space.
Oh, no, it's very sweet and special. Okay, so should we start at the very beginning before we get to fashion, drugs, culture, music?
Yes. Well, so... Absolutely. But I want to go back maybe even before your entry into the world.
Oh, I want to go back to the 50s.
Yeah, I'm saying let's do all the history, full rave history.
Okay.
Tell me everything.
So here's what I know. This is my understanding. And if someone out there is better at music history and cultural history than I am, by all means, you're probably right and I'm probably wrong. But here's what I know. In the 50s, in England, in the UK, they started having what they called raves. And it was basically just like frenetic, crazy partying. And they're playing jazz and they're dancing all night, doing jazz dancing, but they called them raves. And Buddy Holly then came along as a rock and roller, and he had a song called Rave On, which is about being raving, like going out and just being crazy. So
does that just mean you're dancing in a circle with your gal pals with your purses in the center?
It's a little more like sweaty, messy, like dancing with your gal pals with the purses in the center. That's more clubbing. Raving is actual, you're trying to get to a place of whether it's through music, sweat, dancing, possibly drugs, you get to a place of transcendence. That's the goal.
So the goal of raves is to transcend everything, your normal life.
Normal life. So we move forward into the 60s, and here's a little bit of interesting rave trivia. The Mods, which was The Who, Pete Townsend, Keith Moon, they called themselves ravers because they would have these all-night raves where they're listening to mod music, which is like R&B, and they would just take drugs, a lot of speed, and drink, and stay up all night.
Whoa.
And here's where it gets especially interesting, and my facts might be wrong, but I think that one of the first electronic music raves involved, it was 1967, involved electronic music made by Paul McCartney.
What?
Yeah. So they had a psychedelic rave, and there were these, and in the States, they were having things that Andy Warhol's Plastic Inevitable Exploding, whatever it was called. And then there's a band called Silver Apples who sort of invented electronic dance music. They didn't call them raves, but they were raves without the name, meaning they were playing dance music. They were taking tons of drugs. They're staying up all night. They had strobes. They had visuals. It was that was really the beginning of rave culture in the States, even though it wasn't called a rave.
But rave culture was growing globally.
Oh no, we're in the 60s still.
Oh.
We're not even because our version of rave culture started in 1987.
Whoa. Okay,
so
we've got a minute to go.
We've got a minute. So, and then dance culture in the UK morphed into this really fascinating subgenre called Northern Soul. And Northern Soul, it pretty much only happened up north. And it was all these like very working class kids would take tons of speed and go out and dance to R&B all night.
Whoa. That sounds really fun.
Completely underground.
I mean, I've never done speed, but...
And the story of where they got the records is really interesting because it happened in these port towns like Liverpool. And where they got the records, in the States, they were making tons and tons of vinyl. A lot of it didn't sell. And when a boat would go to the States filled with cargo, it would sometimes come back empty, and they needed ballast. They needed weight to keep the boat from tipping over. And so they'd fill the hull with records. And it would go to a place like Liverpool, and they'd unload the records, and the blue-collar guys working in Liverpool would be like, look at all these records. And a lot of it was interesting R&B and soul. So you had really obscure R&B records that only became hits in the Northern Soul scene.
Whoa.
Yeah. And then a band who came from that much later was Dexy's Midnight Runners.
Okay.
You know, Come On Eileen.
Everyone's favorite. What does the song mean?
It's about a girl named Eileen. But they started out as a Northern Soul tribute band. And the song Dexy, and like Dexy's is actually referencing the speed they took. I think dexedrine or dexo something.
Wow.
So Dexy's Midnight Runners actually means like
they're running.
Ravers. They're staying up all night on speed.
Wow, that is cool.
That's our background, which hopefully is mildly interesting to someone. Because we haven't even gotten to rave culture yet.
Yeah, we're still in Northern Soul territory.
Yeah. So the 80s come along and disco died. You know, disco was killed off.
I think disco was murdered.
Disco was murdered by the forces of homophobia and intolerance and racism. But by like 1980, 81, like disco was dead. But it had gone underground.
Ooh.
We've talked about this before, like DJs like David Mancuso, Larry Levan. So it became very gay and very underground. And New York was the epicenter for this. Mm-hmm. So a young DJ named Frankie Knuckles was in New York, and he moved to Chicago because he was having a hard time getting work in New York. And he started DJing at a gay underground club in Chicago called The Warehouse. And that's where house music was born. So this is around 1986. And around this time, some British DJs who had just been playing good old-fashioned, regular mid-80s dance music went to Ibiza, the island in the Mediterranean.
Ibiza, for those who are uncultured. Just kidding, I still call it Ibiza.
So they went to Ibiza, and it was like Paul Oakenfold. I mean, I think it was Danny Rampling, a whole bunch of these seminal UK DJs. They went to Ibiza for a little summer holiday, and while they were there, they discovered two things. Weirdly, on an island in Spain, they discovered house music, and they discovered ecstasy.
Ooh, magical combo.
All of a sudden, 1986, 1987, these DJs were like, whoa, we have seen the future, and it is electronic music combined with ecstasy. So they came back to the UK, and they started clubs, they started DJing, and not surprisingly, because house music and ecstasy were such a good combination, it took off like crazy. Like all of a sudden, there were like 10,000 capacity raves almost overnight happening in the UK. And
wow.
It was huge youth culture. And then another thing happened. Sorry if I'm being all pedantic and historical.
No, these are things I do not know, so I'm happy to know them now.
So another thing that happened was in Detroit, vaguely unrelated, there were 3 electronic music guys, musicians, Derek May, Juan Atkins, and Kevin Saunderson. Mm-hmm. 3 black electronic musicians who were obsessed with science fiction. And they invented techno. Nice. Like they loved Kraftwerk and they loved electronic music, but they also loved Alvin Toffler's Future Shock book. And so they invented techno. And as house music worked well with this burgeoning rave scene in the UK, techno worked even better because it was faster and it kept getting faster. And so by like 1988, 89, like rave culture was this mass phenomena in the UK, and it started spreading. And it spread to Europe. It came here. Like the earliest raves, I think, were probably in California, in Los Angeles and San Francisco. And then New York, with people like Frankie Bones and the Storm Rave. And then Limelight was a center for this as well, for the burgeoning rave culture. And
Party Monster Place, for those that might remember. That's what I know Limelight from. I know that wasn't his... It was his thing?
It was adjacent. So here's just, am I rambling on way too much? Should I just...
No, I'm asking questions of curiosity based on the things that you've mentioned.
Maybe I'm rambling on too much.
No, it's really interesting.
Okay, so Limelight, the New York Center for Rave Culture, on, I think it was Wednesday nights, Michael Allig, who ended up later killing his drug dealer and dismembering him and going to prison.
There's a movie about it or two.
With Macaulay Culkin. Yeah. So... Michael Allig and James St. James, who we're friends with, they had a party on Wednesday. It's called Disco 2000. And that was like gay club kids. But the funny thing is, it was the club kid culture. They listened to house music and techno, and they wore big shiny rave boots, and it kind of looked like rave culture. And then Thursdays, this guy, Lord Michael, had a rave night. And so a lot of us would DJ Wednesdays for Michael Allig and then Thursdays for Lord Michael, playing like basically the same music, just slightly different crowds. Like Wednesday was more gay, Thursday was more ravers.
Whoa. So when you would DJ, are we going too far ahead? Because
I don't know.
I'm asking you questions about...
I'm rambling on like a lunatic.
No. Sure okay, let's go back because I can ask this question later. So you're saying techno, there were those three guys. What were their names again?
The guys who sort of, quote unquote, invented techno. I mean, the truth is they were inspired by Africa Bambaataa and Kraftwerk and Depeche Mode and all sorts of electronic music.
So they're making
Lon Atkins, Kevin Saunderson.
And they're making this really fast
Derek
music.
May.
And then, what was the last one?
Derek May.
And then there are all these places in New York where you can kind of go enjoy a rave. How do you find out about them?
Well, here's the interesting thing, because clearly in like 89, 90, 91, into 92, like no one had cell phones unless you were like a big wheeler dealer in Hollywood driving around with
and you had a cell phone that was like as big as like your
child.
Yeah.
So the way you found out was either going to the record stores. Like in New York, it was Frankie Bones had a store, and then there was Satellite Records. There was Dance Tracks. There were a few other places where you could get flyers for raves. In the UK, their rave scene was fueled by pirate radio. This is super interesting. So in the UK, they had licensed radio, which is basically the BBC. But then all these unlicensed radio stations, which were called pirate radio. So these guys in vans would drive around with radio transmitters as pirate radio stations, and everyone listened to them. In fact, Kiss FM, I think it was Kiss FM in the UK, started as a pirate radio station. And that's how people heard about the music. That's where all the rave music started playing on pirate radio. But also the DJs would give coded clues about how to find the raves. Because the goal was coded as in like don't go to 23rd and 9th tonight. Or was it like more? Well, I was in the UK, so like I don't know what the codes would be, but it was stuff that the ravers would understand that the police wouldn't.
Cool.
Because the moment the police found out about a rave, they would shut it down because they were all legal.
Ugh, bitches.
Whereas in the States, it was much more like flyers, and then sometimes, like in California, especially because the police were much more active in trying to shut these things down, you'd get a flyer to go to a place. And at that place, you'd get another flyer to go to another place. And then so eventually it'd be like 5 coded flyers that would lead you to an aircraft hangar or something.
That's so fun.
Yeah. And no one had cell phones. Here's a fun little bit of trivia. When I first went to the UK, we would get directions to go to the raves, like rain dance and moon dance and all these early UK raves, and we'd get lost. So it'd be 4:00 in the morning, and you're driving around the middle of nowhere, and you're like, we're lost. We've been around the same roundabout 10 times. How are we going to find the rave? So what we did on a couple occasions is you would drive to the highest point you could find, sometimes climb a tree, and just look to the horizon to see where the lights were.
Whoa.
And you'd have to point yourself in that direction.
That's so vintage.
Yeah.
That's so vintage life.
So that brings us to 1992, when rave culture, and all of a sudden it exploded everywhere, all throughout Europe and Australia and the States. It was amazing. And musically, what was another thing that was really cool about it was there were no companies involved. There were no corporations. It was all done, which was kind of like the old punk rocker in me appreciated that like the records were being made in people's bedrooms. The record companies were being started in people's bedrooms. The t-shirts were being made in people's bedrooms. The promoters were working out of their basements. Like it was all very completely DIY.
I mean, I bet that also made everything looked really cool.
Oh yeah, I mean the aesthetic it was borrowed from psychedelia, but it also borrowed from sort of pop art and Andy Warhol.
But it also seems to like have a real sense of humor.
It was very lighthearted, yeah.
Like that lighthearted, fun, free energy, you know? Yeah. Like, and I feel like, and maybe this is just an outsider's perspective. I mean, it is, but it seems like it didn't take itself all that seriously.
It did eventually. And it started by the mid-90s, some rave culture started to take itself way too seriously. And still, the music was good, but it became a little bit more, like people became embarrassed of celebration.
Oh.
And partially it was also the drug shifted to acid and Special K. You know, ecstasy makes you want to jump up and down and hug people. Special K makes you want to sit on the floor, and acid makes you want to just stare into a strobe light. Like, so it became, by the mid to late 90s, it started to get the music was much darker. People were embarrassed of like happy, shiny, throw your hands in the air rave culture.
No, that's sad to me.
It was I actually wrote a song about it called Bring Back My Happiness.
Oh. Yeah.
Because it started getting very, people were trying to intellectualize it while also taking really dark drugs.
We can't have anything nice.
The music was great. Like a lot of that music was wonderful, but it definitely did by the mid to late 90s take itself a little too seriously and sort of lose some of that sparkly, shiny joy.
Isn't Special K the drug that like makes you kind of like go dark and have like horrific visions of dreams in your past?
So have we moved on to rave drugs?
We can. I think it might be time, especially because we're talking about how a lot of the shift in the early version of raves and like the more advanced versions of raves changed a little bit because of it. So
the earliest raves in the 60s were fueled by speed, just amphetamines.
What is speed?
I guess now it would be crystal meth. Back then it was just, because it's crystal methamphetamine. So it's amphetamines, it's speed, uppers.
Okay.
And then in the late 80s, it was just ecstasy. Because at that point, ecstasy was not legal, but you could get a prescription for it. MDMA was a therapeutic drug that gave people feelings of love and warmth. And then they started combining it with speed. So you'd take your ecstasy and you would be happy until 6 o'clock in the morning.
So ecstasy is MDMA and speed together?
And in its most pure, it was MDMA, but then they would cut it with all sorts of other things.
I see.
Because MDMA was expensive and harder to get, and speed, I guess you could get anywhere.
Yeah. Can't you make it out of like allergy medicine?
That's I had a friend who worked for the DEA, and they said they were able to shut down crystal meth production in the States, not distribution, but production, because all they did, they would find places where they sold pseudoephedrine, like congestion medicine. They would draw a circle 20 miles around it, and they'd be like, that's where all your production is.
Whoa.
So then it moved to Mexico and Southeast Asia.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, so ecstasy became the thing. We're not just running around. We're running around and we're feeling love.
People are filled with love, and all of a sudden, like violent, like when ecstasy entered culture in the UK, violence went down. Domestic abuse went down. Sports-related violence went down. It became like this, suddenly people were hugging each other rather than punching each other in the face.
Let's bring back the ecstasy.
There's a reason why it was a therapeutic drug. But then, Special K entered the picture, at least in the States, in like 93, and acid as well, because I guess ecstasy became harder and harder to get. And Special K is ketamine. It's an animal tranquilizer.
Isn't that Special K? Is Rohypnol and Special K similar?
I assume yes,
Okay.
but I don't know. I've never done Rohypnol. I've never seen it, but I assume that and GHB as well. That became I mean, you're from Texas. I don't know if you ever encountered GHB.
Was it a thing in Texas?
Big Southern rave drug for a while.
Oh, really? Yeah. No, I don't think I never really did any of those types of drugs.
And then by the mid to late 90s, people in the rave scene were doing anything they could get their hands on, which is also sort of what led to Michael Alig's downfall, because like they would do any drug. They would take heroin, they would smoke crystal meth, they were smoking crack, they were taking PCP. I had one friend who was really in the rave scene in around 96, 97, and she told me what her drug intake was like on an average night when she was going out. And it was in one night taking ecstasy, acid, smoking weed, possibly having a laced cigarette, which means a cigarette laced with crystal meth.
Oh my God.
Weed that's laced with PCP, and then more acid as the sun's coming up, like in one 12-hour period.
There must have been overdoses all the time.
Here's the thing. Very rarely would people overdose, because none of these drugs, for the most part, they wouldn't really kill you. They would just destroy your brains and your health. Like some of the people who went through that, they're not in good shape. They can't string sentences together. Like it's not good.
Yeah.
So self-involvedly, can I talk about how I got introduced to
that? Was going to be, are we done with drugs? Is that the end of drugs?
The drug part, in my mind, like drugs were an essential part of the rave scene, but not.
It wasn't the heart of the raves.
No, it sort of enabled people to get past their inhibitions, but then it almost made them more honest versions of who they were in some cases.
Yeah. Okay. So, let's move on from the drugs then and talk about little baby Mo and the first time he sat wide-eyed outside of his first rave.
So, in 1986, my friend Richard, who was Irish, and we were talking, and he showed me an article he had read in a British music magazine about this thing called house music. Mm-hmm. And this was pre-internet, pre-anything. And I was like, wow, that sounds so interesting. And so I spent months trying to find house music. You couldn't.
Places that were playing house music.
That was selling it. It was.
Oh, like on records.
There were only like 10 house records in the entire world. And I kept going. I went to the city. I went everywhere just asking people, do you have house music? And no one knew what I was talking about. And then finally, that we might have talked about before, I don't remember, this magic day, I went to a record store in New Haven called Cutler's. And they had a dance section that was being overseen by this wonderful gay DJ. And I walked in, and I was like, I'm in New Haven, Connecticut. What are they going to have? But I said, hey, do you do you know what house music is? And he said, oh, yes. And he walked me over. They had a house music section.
Wow.
Which at that point, I'm not kidding, was 30 records. And I was living in my abandoned factory. I had no money, but I bought all of them and fell in love with house music. Things like Love Can't Turn Around, and the house music anthem is still an anthem. So that was my introduction to house music. And then a year or two later, I started buying techno records, which were on Transmat Records, or Kevin Saunderson had, I forget his label, but it was even more exciting because it was a little more synthetic. Like, it was very sort of futuristic.
Techno was more synthetic.
Techno was. And then I started going to clubs in New York and trying to get a job DJing. Then I got a job DJing. And then the first time I experienced a rave was about as far from rave culture as you could get.
What was it?
There was a club in London, this might have been 89 maybe, called The Brain.
Okay.
And I had heard that it was sort of a legendary-ish rave club. And they were coming to New York. So I found out where it was going to be in 1989. I got the flyer and I went, and I expected there were going to be like 1,000 people waiting outside to get in. It was me and 15 other people. But I went in and they were playing all the house music and techno that I loved. And I was like, wow, that was my introduction to it. And it exploded from there. Like, from that, that's what led to the Limelight. That's what led to the Storm Raves in Brooklyn. So much came from that one little night with 15 people. I think it was like me and DJ DB and a few other people.
At the Brain.
At the Brain on a Sunday night on 3rd Avenue.
The Brain was in New York.
They came for one night only. Yeah.
Oh, I see. So then after The Brain came, people were like, oh, we got to recreate this everywhere here.
Yeah, it was just so... I can't overstate it, how exciting it was.
So before The Brain came to New York City, people weren't listening to house music together. Oh,
The Brain, the house music existed. Sorry, I should have qualified that. 1988, 1989, house music exploded in New York.
We're talking techno.
House music became club music. Uh-huh. So you could go to the Tunnel, you could go to Red Zone, you could go to all these places, and it was great, but it wasn't rave culture. It was club culture.
Okay.
And then what happened when The Brain came and when rave culture exploded, the music was faster. The music was, the ethos was celebratory and love. People were taking ecstasy. And also the clothing was very different. Like the rave aesthetic, when people were listening to house music in 1988, they were wearing club clothes. It was great. It was fun, but it was like black pants, black T-shirts, normal club clothes. Then rave culture happened, and suddenly it was colorful and rainbows and pacifiers and shirts with smiley faces on them. So it wasn't just, it was the whole culture.
I see.
And house music was a part of it, but rave culture was just its own utterly unique thing.
I see. So it was bright, colorful, loving, maybe a little bit more hopeful and lighthearted than the club scene.
The club scene was really fun, but it was club culture.
Yeah.
You know, people drinking cocktails and wearing black clothes and dancing to music. Mm-hmm. But then, because the rave culture, the music was the cornerstone or the center of it, but it was so much more than just going out and wearing black clothes and dancing.
And who are the people that were drawn to rave culture? Like, where did this community, like, did it come from club culture? Did it come from something else that I don't even know about yet? It
became, especially in New York, but also in a lot of places, it was really fascinating. I was mainly familiar with New York, where it was a lot of kids who couldn't get into real clubs.
Why couldn't they get in?
They were too young. So it was a lot of, the drinking age was 21, so it was a lot of 18-year-olds going to illegal raves because they couldn't get into the big clubs.
Fascinating.
So you had like suburban 18-year-old kids and a lot of college students, especially in New York, was people who went to like the School of Visual Arts and Parsons, very creative people. Mm-hmm. But then, thanks to Frankie Bones and this guy, Lord Michael, it was also very working class. Mm. So very like macho guys dancing to techno and hugging each other. It was a very, very fascinating phenomenon. And taking ecstasy and instead of, again, like punching each other, they were suddenly hugging each other. And then there was a lot of, then it sort of embraced the club kids as well. You know, like, so it was sort of like gay college students, very creative, combined with working class people from Bensonhurst. Mm-hmm. And that's how it exploded.
And it exploded really quickly, but then I guess once you get in with that community, then you know where to get the flyers. Like communication to me is, I'm like, how do people do it before cell phones?
Yeah.
It's the most magical thing to me that people could figure out how to communicate with each other via small pieces of paper.
It became record stores. You know, like in New York, the center for this was Liquid Sky, mm-hmm. That had also Satellite Records, I think was part of that. And what made Liquid Sky very famous is that's where Chloe Sevigny's first job was. Working at Liquid Sky, cute. And Rosario Dawson and Harmony Korine. That's where the whole movie Kids sort of came from that.
Crazy.
Yeah. And here's where it gets also quite interesting. One of the earliest rave kids who used to go to NASA, where I DJ'd all the time, was Jay-Z. So there's footage of Jay-Z when he was like 17 hanging out at NASA, like rapping on the front steps.
Whoa, that's really cool. So then, okay. So I want to start talking about, like, as you got deeper into this scene, what that was like for you as someone who enjoyed them, but also as a musician.
Well, so my background had been playing guitar. You know, I played in punk rock bands, I played in different bands, but by the mid 80s, I had gotten a little bored of guitar music. So I started listening to hip hop and then house music. And when rave culture started, I embraced it with every part of my being. Mm-hmm. The only two things that made my experience different were I was sober at the time. So in the late 80s, early 90s, I was not taking drugs. I was just going out sober every night.
Were you writing X on your hand?
I wasn't writing X, maybe every now and then. And then, of course, I relapsed in 1995. But that's a whole other story. And the other thing that made my experience different was I came from the world of writing songs and standing on stage and performing. Mm-hmm. And so when I started making records, like electronic music records and rave records, I would perform. Like I would get on stage and I'd run around and I'd yell and I'd play instruments. And weirdly, no one else was really doing that because they came from DJ culture. And so a lot of the other performers, they're making great records, but they're very shy.
Yeah.
And so they would build these walls of equipment and hide behind the equipment because that's what they thought you were supposed to do.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I come from punk rock, so I'm going to stand on my equipment and jump into the crowd. And I just thought that was normal, but I guess it wasn't.
So you were doing something really special.
Something quite different at the time, but also got a lot of criticism for it.
Why?
Because the electronic music snobs thought that the only way to perform electronic music was to build a wall of synthesizers and hide behind them. Oh. And what I was doing was distasteful and garish in their eyes.
That's interesting. Did you hear about these critiques when you were actively doing it?
Oh, all the time.
And how did that make you feel?
It made me very sad.
Really?
So I was like, this is rave culture. I'm one of you guys. Like, I'm part of this. And like, I would play guitar on stage and I would be attacked because electronic music wasn't allowed to involve guitars. And I was trying to bring rock culture to electronic music. And I was like, no, this is just who I am and what I do.
Whoa. But it didn't make you stop.
No, I couldn't stop, but it definitely, like, it made me sad. And what we were talking about earlier, how the culture became less celebratory, became less open. So by the mid-90s, I had started sort of looking elsewhere. I was like, okay, rave culture has gotten kind of conservative. And then I got really into speed metal and punk rock again.
Okay, I see.
But that's a tangent away from this.
I see. So you were doing something really, really unique in Raveland.
I mean, eventually, the first tour I did, the first rave-ish tour I did was with the band The Prodigy and with Richie Houghton. And at that point, The Prodigy were rave kids. And they were great, but we were touring and I was playing guitar on stage. And then the next tour they did, they were playing guitar on stage. So I think, I don't know, they probably would have figured it out anyway, but I think they kind of saw that if you're going to get on stage, you should make the effort to perform and actually play instruments.
Yeah.
Which is not to criticize more restrained electronic music, because it's great, but it was way more fun to jump up and down.
Well, I think...
and yell.
It does sound a lot more fun. And I feel like you're a very active and involved person in the stuff that you do. So I'm sure you were like, I won't be held down by your societal norms.
Yeah. That's what I should have said.
Yeah, you were the punk rock raver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then no one liked me. It was very sad.
No, yes, they did.
Okay. Some people did.
Yeah. I mean, but I feel like that was your entry, like your big entry into the world of music was through that world, right? Like those were your first big hits was in that world.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean...
So they were embracing you. You were being embraced. Your music was being embraced on some level.
But also, as we've seen, like if you become very visible and you have some success, inevitably
people get mad.
People are going to get mad and they're going to hate you. So there were lots of reasons why people started to dislike me.
Well, I'm sure they are really excited about you now because you're wearing that frog hat. Do you ever want to have a Moby rave?
Yes.
Like you could be the rave purist that brings back the ultimate rave energy, feeling.
But the funny thing is, it came back. So now let's jump forward a little bit.
Yeah, let's be here now.
Okay. Well, let's be in 2008 here now.
Okay, that's also nice.
So in 2007, I started DJing a lot again because it was really fun and there's a lot of great electronic music being made. And at this point in 2007, I thought rave culture had died. Mm-hmm. I was like, well, the music's good. I know there's some big raves in Europe, but for the most part, like in the States, I was like, oh, I guess rave culture has died. Mm-hmm. It's kind of sad about it, but all things must pass. And I got asked to DJ a rave in Los Angeles in 2008.
What was it called? Do you remember?
Electric Daisy.
Hey, that's still a thing.
It's still a thing.
Cool.
And I think it was Electric Daisy. And I was like, oh, yeah, sure. And when they said DJ a rave called Electric Daisy in 2008, turns out I had played there before I had played for them before in the 90s, I think, when it was called something different. But in any case, 2008, I'm in Los Angeles. Do you want to DJ at a rave? I was like, yeah, sure. Thinking it's going to be 500 people in a club. And my friends and I drove there, and it was at the Los Angeles Coliseum. And I remember looking around, like thinking, oh, is it going to be in like the basement of the Los Angeles Coliseum? And no, it was in the Los Angeles Coliseum. There were 50,000 people there. And I thought because this was 2008. So this was like social media people didn't have phones yet, really. I mean, they did, but like social media was still in its infancy. I think people were on Friendster. If you remember Friendster?
I don't. Okay. Friendster was a little bit before me.
Okay. So I walked in and I DJ'd. There were 50,000 people in a coliseum dancing to electronic music. And I remember thinking self-evidently, oh, I guess rave culture is back. And here's what made it interesting. The next day, I went to a barbecue in Venice. Mm-hmm. And there were all these music people there. And I said, hey, anybody here in Los Angeles hear about Electric Daisy that happened last night? None of them did. And I said, oh, yeah, I played at a rave last night. And they were like, there are no more raves. And I was like, as a matter of fact, there were 50,000 people there. And all these people in the music business were so dismissive. I'm working under the assumption that maybe they don't work in the music business anymore.
Yeah.
Because obviously from 2008 until now, I mean, Electric Daisy is now like 300,000 people. They have Tomorrowland in Europe, which sells close to 500,000 tickets in 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So obviously, rave culture has come back, and that old sort of, we'll call it like electronic music snobbery, that still exists, but for the most part, it's too big for anyone to pay too much attention to it. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm sure there are still some people who are upset that rave culture is still very celebratory, but no one's really listening to them.
Yeah. So now, the rave world now versus what the rave world then, if you had to like point out the differences between them.
Well, they're good and bad differences.
Okay.
The good difference is that the sound and the lights and the visuals are phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, like the last time I played in the Sahara tent at Coachella, what's happened technologically, it's phenomenal. Mm-hmm. I mean, back then it was like a couple of cool projections and some strobe lights. And now it's like being inside the psychedelic mind of Steve Jobs on acid. Like the visuals are just so spectacular.
That's awesome.
And the sound is better. So technically, rave culture now is so much better. And the music is wonderful, but one thing, not surprisingly, as the raves have gotten so gigantic, the music has gotten a little safer at times. Mm. You know, I remember one of the last times I DJ'd a big rave in Southern California, I'm not going to name names, but the DJ who played after me was one of the biggest DJs in the world, and he was playing a Katy Perry remix. And I'd always thought like, oh, the music we're creating is an alternative. Nothing against Katy Perry or the world of Katy Perry remixes, but it felt like this isn't what we were fighting for. Like we were fighting for an alternative. We were fighting for something new. We were fighting for something that was, if it became top 40, it was because it was so good that the top 40 would bend to us.
Right. So like there was an embrace of underground and independence and creativity as opposed to like using things from like commercial major marketing brandy stuff.
Yeah. And I certainly am not complaining about people making money or people having success and people doing Katy Perry remixes. Like in my life, I've done Michael Jackson remixes. I've done a lot of questionable stuff, but it was playing top 40 records to an audience of 50,000 ravers just seemed a little bit defeatist to me.
Yeah.
You know,
lazy.
Just like the goal was to sort of like challenge an audience with remarkable new music and culture.
Yeah.
And this felt a little bit like being a top 40 wedding DJ.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure most people don't live quite as principled lives as you do. And as some of like the punk rockers, the like original ravers, all of those people who like grew up in a world who like the blueprints of their mind was created in a culture that was so very celebratory of that mentality. And
again, success has always seemed okay if the success comes to you. Mm-hmm. Like if you do something wonderful and you do something special and new and joyful and great, then yeah, success, if it results from that, that's fantastic. Mm-hmm. But not if the creativity is compromised to accommodate that success.
Yeah.
Then it's just sort of depressing.
Yeah, it does sound kind of depressing, but it also sounds like this, like the world of raves is very much back, but maybe slightly more commercial.
Well, here's the thing. It's everything.
Yeah.
It's underground, it's commercial, it's big, it's small, it's challenging, it's top 40, electronic music has become the sort of de facto music of the world. Mm-hmm. Different, obviously like in different countries, that's not the case, but like globally, raves and electronic music, like it took over everything.
Yeah.
But it's funny because that is a recurring question that I've been asked about electronic music. Like, oh, has it become too commercial? And I'm like, sure, but it's also completely underground.
Yeah.
Like you can go out in almost any city in Europe on a Friday night and hear uncompromising underground electronic music and top 40 electronic music. Mm-hmm. And everything in between. You can go to a rave for 500,000 people, or you can go to an underground club where they're playing minimal techno for 30 people. So it's taken over everything.
When I would think of raves, because what my exposure to it was probably around the time of like early Electric Daisy stuff, was like for big fuzzy boots and bikinis and glow sticks. But that feels very different from the rave world that you came up in.
Well, to be fair, the fashion, are we segueing and moving into the world of rave fashion?
Yeah.
That was pretty expertly done on your part.
Thanks.
So rave fashion was always a huge part of it. Mm-hmm. Everybody got dressed up. Even I tried to get dressed up.
What did you wear?
Well, I didn't know where people got their giant trousers.
Oh, so you did never have big pants.
I eventually figured it out. Liquid Sky, I was able to buy a pair of giant trousers for $50 at Liquid Sky.
Wow.
And so I wore them every time I went out.
Cute.
Trying to look cool.
What shoes were people wearing?
Oh, you just wear sneakers.
Any sneakers? Okay.
Yeah, so the big trousers phenomena, I've never understood it.
Is it so you could hide your drugs in there?
I don't know. I thought that was always the logic for like big sweatshirts and things. Like you could steal things and hide them in there or hide drugs. But the big trousers, because at some point they were really big. They were like gigantic to the point of they looked like hoop skirts. Mm-hmm. I thought they were fun, but I never understood the logic behind them. Having like a 29-inch waist and like a 45-inch pant leg.
Yeah, maybe it was just really comfortable.
Yeah, I could never figure that out.
Fashion man.
Yeah.
Bit of a mystery.
And then the T-shirts, for the longest time, it was cultural, intentional corporate appropriation. So
such as?
People would take, like there was a company here called Fresh Jive. Have you ever heard of Fresh Jive? Mm-mm. They were like a rave.
Chive?
Jive. Yeah, Fresh Jive. Fresh Jive. And everybody would do this. You would take a logo and change it to be a drug reference.
Like what? Do you remember any?
Let me think.
Ford, but it would be like
4E.
Oh, was that a thing?
Lots of E stuff. Lots
yeah.
of like if you could work ecstasy, or like you would just take like the Coca-Cola logo and write ecstasy instead.
That's really fun.
And they were, because all these kids were coming from Parsons and SVA, so they're all graphic designers. So they made these amazing product borrowed T-shirts, completely illegal, but you weren't selling them in stores. You were selling them out of the back of a truck.
Yeah. Wow. That's really fun.
But then we get into the world of, there are two very practical aspects of rave accoutrement.
Okay.
One, the pacifiers that you brought.
Yeah. Okay.
The dummies. So
the dummies?
In the UK, they're called dummies.
Okay. For babies?
Yeah. Maybe that must not be very nice if you're like a baby and you're constantly being said like, hey, dummy, do you want your dummy?
Your dummy? So, yeah. It's kind of cute, I guess.
So pacifiers / dummies would keep you from grinding your teeth when you were on ecstasy that had too much speed in it. That's why they all wear them.
It's so you don't grind your teeth.
Yeah, because you're so out of your mind on speed-fueled ecstasy that you don't want to grind the enamel off of your teeth. Yeah, that's why all ravers have pacifiers.
Whoa, that is so crazy.
Yeah, it's not a fashion thing. It's actually a practical thing to keep you from breaking your teeth on drugs.
I mean, it used to be practical, but now this is pure fashion.
Little of both. It's like a mullet, like business up front, fashion in the back.
Oh my God, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, it's a rave mullet. And the other was whenever you'd walk into a rave in the UK, especially if it was indoors, you'd be overwhelmed with the smell of Vicks Vapor Rub. People would cover themselves with Vicks Vapor Rub because it made your skin tingle and it would feel amazing on ecstasy.
What?
So you'd walk into a rave and all you would smell, like so much so that like your sinuses would clear.
Wow, I need some of that right now.
Everybody would cover themselves with Vicks.
Because it felt good for no other reason than it felt good.
Made your skin tingle.
Wow.
Yeah.
Would people bring just like big things of it and just like give it to all their friends? That's so sweet.
Yeah. And then rave fashion, I guess it's also like you're dancing for 8 hours, so you drink a lot of water and you wear light clothes that are going to get covered in sweat.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry if that's super self-evident.
No, I mean, it's practical.
Yeah.
You don't want to wear like, your big velvet jacket.
You don't want to be wearing like a flannel lined overcoat.
Yeah, no, that would be bad.
Trying to think what else do you want to talk about in the world of rave stuff? Or because at some point I have to learn you how to do it.
No, well, this is all very, very fascinating. I love it all so much. But yeah, no, let's move on to, I want to talk a little bit about Feeling So Real before we go into the nuts and bolts of it.
Okay, because rave dancing, we need to stand up. So while we're seated, why don't we talk about Feeling So Real?
Okay, let's talk about that seated, and then we're going to stand up, but we're going to have to explain what we're doing for our audio people.
It'll yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about Feeling So Real for a moment. Where did the idea for this song come from?
Well, in 1994, as we've discussed, the rave scene was changing and becoming less celebratory. And me being a sort of like a contrarian who loved the celebratory rave scene, I was trying to push things back into that joyful realm. I had that song, Bring Back My Happiness. And Feeling So Real, I just wanted to write a big, over-the-top, euphoric, joyful techno track. And so that's what I was trying to do. And then I sampled a vocal. And
where did the vocal come?
Came from a disco record.
Okay.
And then something very sad happened.
What?
My manager reached out to the record label who owned this disco record that I wanted to use. And they wanted $50,000.
Okay.
And 50% of the royalties. And I was like, I didn't have $50,000. Like I was living in a factory. I was paying $600 a month rent. Like I'd never even thought of that much money.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no, I can't use this sample. Like it's so depressing. Oh, I was very sad. It's like my great rave anthem is going to be, it's never going to see the light of day. And then my manager, Barry, met this woman named Mayim Rose and sent her to my studio. And he was like, well, maybe try and make something different. And she came over and she was so lovely and sweet. She was sort of like a Broadway musical theater person. And we tried 100 different things and nothing worked. And by the end of the day, she was like sweaty and tired and nothing had quite worked. And the last minute I said, how about this? I'm feeling so real. And it was the upper range of her voice. And I had her do it a few times and she was like, she was like, I can't even sing anymore. I had burned out her voice. And so that's where that vocal came from.
From the end of the day after.
End of the day after having my sample taken.
But she sounds amazing.
Yeah, she sounds phenomenal.
So you just came up with I'm Feeling So Real in your brains.
Yeah, it's only 2 notes. I'm feeling so real.
And why did you say feeling so real? What did real mean?
So I was not shy about honoring some of my favorite sort of rave and disco traditions. Mm-hmm. So there was a famous gay disco song, I think in the early 80s, called You Make Me Feel Mighty Real.
Oh, interesting.
And I love that song. And then there was a band called Dream Frequency who had a song called, I think it was Feeling Surreal, Surreal,
okay,
or maybe
close.
so. There were a bunch of rave acts who had their versions of Feeling So Real, and honestly, I was just borrowing from them. Like I was like, look, it comes from disco. It comes from everything. Like feeling real. Like I clearly have not invented this concept, even if it is nebulous and undefined. So yeah, I was like, out of the blue, sang I'm Feeling So Real, and Mayim Rose sang it, and then had to sit down and rest.
And do you remember so you put it out on a record?
It was on the album Everything Is Wrong, but then what happened that's interesting, in its original form, it didn't really do anything.
Okay.
But then a friend of mine in Germany named Westbam, who had been a hip-hop DJ, a punk rocker who became a hip-hop DJ, who then sort of brought rave culture to Germany, he and some other people. He did a remix, and it became a top 5 record throughout Europe.
Whoa, okay.
Based on his remix, not based on my version.
So then the version that we all know now is from Everything Is Wrong, but the version that went super cray-cray was a remix.
Yes.
I see.
Yeah. And so the version I play live is based on the Everything Is Wrong version. And then another thing happened in 1995.
What?
Is I went on tour with Lollapalooza. And I didn't know what to expect because Lollapalooza was rock, with Pearl Jam and Nirvana. And like the year I was doing it was Pavement and Beck and Hole and Sonic Youth. And I was like, oh no, what's going to happen? I'm on the second stage. There can be like 10 people throwing garbage at me when I play electronic music. And it was phenomenal. We had bigger audiences at the second stage than they had on the main stage.
Whoa.
And it was just, it felt like a moment. Like every show of that year, the Lollapalooza 1995 was amazing. It really was very special.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you played Feeling So Real.
That was the closer every night.
And people lost their minds.
I mean, I'm sure you could find people who were there, and that was their introduction to rave culture. I was basically a rave evangelist going to the Midwest.
Wow. Turning people, changing people's minds out of the cornfield and into the warehouse.
So when I'm just rushing a little bit because I want to do the Feeling So Real track breakdown.
Let's do it now.
But I also want to teach you how to do a 1992 style rave dance.
Let's do it.
Okay. And for the people who are listening, even though this will be visual, we'll describe it.
Okay.
Okay. So it's if you're watching, it'll be better because then it's ridiculous because I'm going to look like an idiot.
But if you're listening and you've got a great imagination, it'll also be absurd.
But maybe if someone's just listening and not watching, they'll think that we're way cooler than we are.
I'm okay with that. But anyone watching, now you just have to know how not cool we are.
So, for people who are listening, we are currently standing up. We had been sitting down now. We are standing up.
I think this may be a first, a MobyPod first, which is us standing up because we're always sitting down.
Yeah, I like sitting.
Yeah, sitting is nice.
You look tall.
Well, I'm wearing a boot with
okay,
thing on it.
And I'm not very tall myself, so everybody looks kind of tall. So, rave dancing. And if you're listening, hopefully it'll be entertaining.
And it can serve as a sort of how-to.
Yeah.
For you.
So here's the first thing is rave dancing. Your eyes have to be kind of wide. Yeah, because you're having an experience that's probably fueled by some sort of stimulant. So your eyes are wide.
Okay.
We'll
eyes wide.
Start basic, which is basically the basic. I'm going to take off my...
Yeah, you're going to need to pop that top off. Oh my God, look at your cute shirt. Oh, that's so cute.
It's a cute little
I want that shirt.
I think we can probably get you one.
Yes.
Okay, so eyes are wide. Let's start with some finger wagging. You're just pointing. but maybe point down here so the cameras can see it. Yeah, so you're just finger wagging like, yeah, I love this. Oh, it's so good. Finger wag, finger. More like, yeah. Okay, now.
Wait, finger wagging was a real part of it?
Yeah, like, oh, yeah, I love this one.
Okay.
Or maybe a little slower, but who knows? Something finger waggy. Then let's give some directions. We're working up to we're starting small.
Eyes wide, finger wagging. And
now directions like, let's go left, go right, go left, right.
Wait, you're pointing in different directions?
Yeah, like left, right,
with just index finger out? So your arm is about mid-length.
Go
waist
to the left
level.
twice, go to the right twice. Yeah. Going to the left twice, going to the right twice.
Okay, it does feel so much better than I thought it was going to feel to do.
And now,
all right.
It's classic that a lot of people understand is you're bringing in the plane. You're working on the tarmac. No, you got your bring in the plane. You got your little glow sticks. Bring it in the plane. Yeah.
Okay, this does also feel
Bring in the plane. To the right, to the left. Bring in the plane. There's that plane. Oh, plane. You're pointing to the pilot.
Oh, so you can mix up these moves. You can wave the plane, and then you can
point. Yeah. Well, you're not really doing like that. It's like 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And now you're going to learn the rave dance secret.
What?
3 simple things.
Okay.
Big fish. Say it with me.
Big fish.
Little fish.
Little fish.
Cardboard box.
Cardboard box.
Now imagine big fish.
Big fish.
Little fish.
Little fish.
Top and bottom of a cardboard box.
Top and bottom of a cardboard box. So your hands are all the way out showing something large?
No, like this, like.
Oh, your hands.
Big fish, little fish, cardboard box. Big fish, little fish, cardboard box. Big
so you show something large, you show something small, top and bottom of the cardboard box, alternate top and bottom.
Big fish, little fish, cardboard box. Big fish, little fish, cardboard box. Big fish, little fish, cardboard box. Big fish.
And who was the choreographer behind these moves? They just evolved naturally.
Box. Point to the left, point to the right, point to the left, point to the right. Big fish, little fish, cardboard box. Big fish, little fish, cardboard box. Bring in the plane, bring in the plane, bring in the plane, bring in the plane. Arguably the dumbest thing I've ever done that's been documented. Yeah. Oh, don't forget the finger wag. Point to the pilot. Hey, you, pilot. Pointing at you. Bring in the plane. Bring in the plane. Point to the left. Point to the right. Big fish, little fish, cardboard box. Big fish, little fish, cardboard box.
Can you go cardboard, big fish, little fish?
Sure, cardboard,
little
cardboard,
fish,
little fish, big fish, cardboard, little fish, big fish.
And you just do that for 8 hours.
Big fish, little fish, cardboard box. Big fish, little fish, cardboard box. Bring in the plane. Bring in the plane. Hey, 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 hey. Oh, left. Oh, right. Oh, left.
And you saw people doing this in a room, and you were like, "I must be."
I'm sure people would do other things, but that's basically like the basics of 1992 style rave dancing.
Do you want to know what I did the one time I went to a pseudo rave?
Sure.
My dance move was I just put I put my hands up in the air, and I looked up, and I just I was spinning around. I just spun around like this for a long.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, that was pretty fun.
I'm not saying this is the only thing one could do.
But this is El Clasico.
These are just sort of like 1992. You're in the north of the UK. You're dancing. Carl Cox is DJing. Yeah, all that.
Yeah, it feels really good.
Little fish, cardboard. Bring in the plane. Bring in the plane.
No, this is great because we can keep this all in mind while we're listening to the Feeling So Real deconstruction.
And hopefully, I'm actually now hoping that more people will listen to what we just did rather than watch it, because I have a feeling what we just did and filmed is something
people could blackmail us with.
I'm going to regret for a long time.
I feel pretty good about it.
It's either a high water moment in my life or definitely a very, very low bottom.
Well, I guess we'll just have to watch it back.
Yeah. But I also think even if it's completely ridiculous, we have to share it.
That's what I learned today.
Yeah. So now you could build a time machine and go back to 1992 and be a rave dancer in Sheffield or Leeds.
Perfect.
Should we do the multi-track Feeling So Real breakdown?
Let's do it.
Great. Okay, so Linz, we're going to try something.
Okay.
We are going to open up the multi-track version. That, by the way, your hat over headphones.
You love it?
It didn't look in any way ridiculous before. Should I try it?
Yeah, you should.
Okay. It's the stupidest
So
thing.
dumb.
Yeah. So, yeah, I feel like we are the village idiots. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, we're going to open up the multi-track version of Feeling So Real, the new remix. And I thought it might be fun to show you all the different things that are in this new remix.
I'm looking at the screen before me.
Yes.
And there are a lot of little pieces going on here.
Yeah, each one of those is a different sound.
There are
Lots.
so many.
So where do you just pick one thing and we'll start with that.
Well, I think the only way I'll be able to keep track of it is to start at the top.
Well, but over here on the left, which is not on screen, is the faders. So just sound-wise, just pick a sound that you like.
No, let's start with number one, the first one. Yeah.
Okay, that's a very minor part of it, but you know what's next.
Okay. Hey!
So tell me what you want. Drums, bass, what do you want?
Drums.
What kind of drums? We got all sorts of drums.
Little baby drums.
How about kick drum?
Sure.
So we got the kick drum there, and the vocal, and a little acid part. So should we bring in a snare?
Yeah. I see they're friends. They're best friends and they work together.
Yeah.
Ding, ding.
They're having such a good time playing.
Ding, ding, ding. Okay.
Do you want to mute anything?
No, I want to keep building. I want more.
Okay, how about a little more drums?
Yeah. Oh, the drums are all so friendly.
Yep. Tell me what, more drums? Want bass? What?
I want another drum. I want
Okay. Here you go.
drum team. Oh my goodness.
Aren't you sad that we're sitting down? You can't do your rave dancing?
Who says I can't? Okay.
Bass? There are two basses.
Okay, let's do a bass.
That's one. And here comes number two. Maybe number two's kind of subtle.
Yeah, that is a subtle bass. More, something else.
Okay.
What's
here
that?
we go. Here's the biggie.
Oh.
Okay, we're going to get rid of some of these things. See, the sunrise is coming up.
Is that your sunrise sound?
Yeah, this is like this nice moment. You're hugging
So
your
soothing.
best friends. Everybody's happy. Sun's coming up. Hooray. Sound of whistles. Blue, blue, blue. I don't know how to make a whistle sound. That's supposed to be a rave whistle. Yay. People like hands in the air, hugging. Everybody's happy, right?
Yeah.
And then, how about we just bring in something a little subtle, like a little hi-hat. You ready? Ooh, starts to build a little bit. But you're the DJ here. Tell me what we should be doing.
Well, the problem is I don't know what is in all of these things.
Just say a word.
Bucket.
Buck.
I don't know.
Drums, bass, what? Snare?
Piano.
There is no piano, but
Oh, drum.
okay. How about this little kick drum? And then our favorite little drum, little guy here playing well together.
Ooh.
Everybody's having a good time now, right?
Oh, yeah.
But you know what's missing? I don't know what this is. Little extra vocal, and now the bass. And now we have the whole song.
I like that thing in the background that's going like...
Your microphone's falling down.
What?
Your microphone is falling down. You gotta lady handle it. Yeah, really get in there. Yeah.
Okay.
So isn't that fun?
So fun.
Do you want to make it a little darker?
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna take the keyboards out now. You ready?
Yeah.
Ooh. Strobes are going. Ooh, nighttime, dark. Pow, pow, pow. That's the sound of nighttime and darkness.
Yeah, this just became a song you fight to.
Ooh, yeah, it's like an ultimate fighting. What mixed martial arts.
Yeah.
And now we take out the bass and we just have some interesting drum stuff with vocals.
Ooh. Something exciting happens after this.
Are we ready for sunrise again?
Yeah, let's have it.
Yes, yes, here we go. Yes, yes, here we go.
This is really fun.
Yeah, isn't it fun?
This is a good remix.
This is why playing electronic music is so fun. You just get to do all this fun stuff.
Yes, yes, here we go.
Yay! Bring in the plane. Bring in the plane. Big fish, little fish, cardboard box. Big fish, little fish, cardboard box. Big fish, little fish, cardboard box. Big fish, little fish, a cardboard box. Yeah. Where are you going? To the left. To the right. To the left. To the right. Yeah. Oh, what's that? I don't even know what that is. Oh, backwards, big fish, little fish, cardboard box. Okay. So I guess that's it. That's the end of our show.
I can't. Yeah, I mean, I can't believe how fun this journey was. To learn the history of ravens.
So thank you for helping me out on my historical journey of raving.
Thanks for being so forthcoming with your experience.
And thanks to Erin, who's sitting back there watching us, wondering why she took this job.
Thanks and sorry, Erin.
Yeah, thanks and profound apologies for not understanding how adults are supposed to live. And thank you, Bagel, for not getting too scared, because there was some scary stuff happening.
Yeah,
like we
she
stood
did a
up.
really good job.
Thanks to Human Content.
Thanks to Human Content. Thanks to Jonathan Nesvadba, who edits this podcast. And thanks, Moby, for your stories.
And thanks everybody for listening.
Yeah, also that really big time.
And also, do you know one of the reasons why Erin especially thinks we're completely ridiculous?
Why?
Because she can't hear any of the music.
Oh, yeah.
So she's just looking at us dancing to nothing.
Sorry, Erin.
Yeah. So with that note, let's just play the song for a minute. And then
Forget to dance.
and we'll see you guys and hear you guys and talk to you guys really soon.